who do we think the three permanent opponents are going to be for Mississippi State? We know one. They're going to play Ole Miss every single year. Who do you think
Yeah,
the
so
other
we
two
need
end up
two.
being?
Yeah, two more. Who do you? Okay, so who do we think it will be? Let me ask you this, because I'm not like studied Mississippi State my whole life. I'm not that guy. But let me ask you this, Andrew. Who should it be? Because as much as I would love to bring those teams back for Alabama, you probably won't have them as permanent opponents. But I could see, I don't know, if I had to just take a guess, my gut says Texas A&M and maybe a team like Florida along with Ole Miss. I don't know, but what are your thoughts?
So I don't think
Just
Florida
thinking
would
off the
be.
top of my head there,
Yeah,
by the
no,
way, I don't know.
I don't think Florida would be in that group. I feel like a few years ago I did see a random prediction that had Mississippi State and Florida put together, but that one wouldn't really work. I think the Gators have a few other teams that they obviously they're going to get Tennessee and Georgia every year, and then it's a matter of who the other one is. Um,
Yeah.
Texas A&M, a lot of people have talked about. I can see that one for sure, um, because the fact of the matter is, A&M has. I know they've kind of had pseudo rivalries with Arkansas and with LSU. There's
Yeah.
something there. They have the one game. It's Texas. Like they have to play Texas. And also, I know Oklahoma's an old conference opponent of theirs. Oklahoma and Texas A&M really don't care about each other. So like that's not like a we have to play each other type game. Um, but so like A&M is a team that has some openings. That's the thing you have to consider is if you're a team that does not have a lot of must be played rivalries, you're probably going to get paired up with a team that also doesn't have a lot of must play rivalries. Um,
Hmm.
and I could see Texas A&M being one of those. There's a lot of similarities between the team. There's a lot of tied history between the team. Interestingly enough, um, with a few different coaches who have been on who've been at the programs before. So I could see Texas A&M for sure. The one that I've talked about a lot that I think makes sense is Kentucky. Kentucky is a team that's in
Kentucky.
an interesting spot where they do not have a true SEC rival. I know in football that is. Um,
Yeah.
Kentucky Tennessee is a rivalry, but when I say a true SEC rival, I mean both sides. Like I won't even do the both. No, both sides view it as like we've got to play this game, and Tennessee fans really don't care whether they play Kentucky or not. It's just
I
kind of is
don't
what.
even know if it would be. I think if they had one, because it's been played a lot, I feel like for Kentucky it would be Florida. But even I don't know how the Florida fans feel, so I'm gonna
Well,
agree with you here.
there's been talk about Kentucky and Florida when people have laid this out because most people thought the 3+6 model would be what would be adopted. Kentucky
Right.
Florida has come up a lot. Kentucky Tennessee has also come up because there was a stretch where Kentucky and Tennessee played each other on the last week of the season. Um, like that was a thing that happened for a period. So like it's not a game that means nothing. But Tennessee obviously cares significantly more about playing Alabama, Florida, and Georgia. They also have the in-state
Hmm.
opponent of Vanderbilt. Like they're going to play Vanderbilt every year. So
True.
so like
True.
you have more teams that Tennessee is going to prioritize. I'm not saying Tennessee couldn't get Kentucky because I think that's who Kentucky fans would most want. Um, but there's a that's not a huge rivalry. So I say all this to say Kentucky's going to have open spots. Mississippi State is a team that I think makes a lot of sense to be paired up
Hmm.
with. Um, the teams were permanent rivals when the SEC East and West was created in '92. They got paired together and played each other every single year up until I guess 2023. Oh, sorry, 20 up until this season. 2023 was the last time they played. So we've
So
gone 1 year without
basically,
playing.
yeah, that's right. Because everyone had, or most everyone in the SEC had that cross division rival they called it, and it was
Everyone did
Kentucky and Mississippi State. Yep.
for a while. A lot of teams had two actually.
Yeah.
That was a back in the '90s. That was the case, and ultimately they cut it down to just one. Uh,
I feel like didn't Alabama had Tennessee? We always had Tennessee, but did we not play Florida on a regular outside of SEC titles or something? I
no,
don't even know.
Alabama, I think might have been Vanderbilt. So it was.
Of
This
course
is
it
back in
was.
the 90s. This is going way back. And the reason
Yeah.
Florida played Auburn. That's like people don't realize Florida and Auburn used to be a big SEC game.
Yeah.
Because that is I believe Florida is actually the closest team. Florida and Auburn like closest to each other within the SEC. It's the closest SEC campuses are Alabama, Mississippi State. But like for those opponents, the closest one is actually I think Auburn is closer to Florida or Florida is closest to Auburn. Is I guess is what it is because I guess Auburn would be closer to Alabama. But the closest SEC team to Florida is Auburn. So those teams used to play a lot. And when the SEC first went to divisions, Florida always wanted to play Auburn, but Georgia always wanted to play Auburn too. So Auburn got Georgia and Florida as their permanents, and they kind of went from there. So anyway, we're getting way off track here. Mississippi State, Kentucky was one of those games, and I will say that's a series that's been very competitive over the years. That's a series that at a certain point reached some bad blood. Honestly, in the like 2016 through 2019, like there was legit hatred on the field between two fan bases that otherwise shouldn't care about each other. But I think that's a game that makes a lot of sense for both sides. The other one, like I said, Texas A&M could be. There's going to be a lot of people that say Alabama, and the reason they're going to say Alabama is I kind of already mentioned it, closest teams together, and Mississippi State is Alabama's most played opponent historically. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people would think it was Auburn, but there was a long stretch that the Iron Bowl did not get played. Mississippi State is Alabama's most played opponent.
Yeah.
The only reason Mississippi State and Alabama would get paired together is so that Alabama does not have to play three top-tier teams every single year. Because Alabama's three biggest games are Auburn, LSU, Tennessee. On an annual basis, those are the three big games on Alabama's schedule. And Nick Saban himself, when they were first discussing this format a few years ago when he was still head coach, publicly complained that they were talking about giving Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, LSU every single year because it's not fair that those three games are far tougher than what everybody else would get. I will also say it is very funny that Nick Saban did this right after Tennessee beat. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to trash talk Alabama to you, but it's very funny.
Hey.
Saban did this for the first time after Tennessee beat him for the first time in his career. When Tennessee was sucking, Saban did not care about having Tennessee on that schedule every year. The second Tennessee got good, all of a sudden it's a problem that we have to play the Vols every single year alongside LSU and
I know exactly what you're talking about, and I remember when he was saying it in like a presser, or maybe he like was said it in an interview or something. I don't remember where he said it, but I saw a quote and I said, "Ain't that some stuff right there, Nick?"
I mean, the argument is that the whole argument that they were basically trying to get is that every team in the SEC should not no team in the SEC should have to play three permanent games. If we're going to do this idea of a permanent schedule or permanent opponents, they should try to balance it out as much as possible, and that no one should have to have three games against the upper tier. But I would say if those are your three biggest rivals, you should have to play them. But a lot of people wanted to pair Mississippi State and Alabama together, basically to throw Alabama a bone. Was what that boiled down to. I will be pretty ticked off if the return of the Battle of Highway 82 is made permanent once again. I'm perfectly fine not having that game. Perfectly fine not having that game on the schedule every single year. One that I came up with that I think is interesting is actually in it, the other team within the state of Alabama is Auburn. Mississippi State, interestingly enough, is also Auburn's most played opponent. State's also LSU's most played opponent. State played those three teams a lot. And also, if you look into the history, Mississippi State played those games almost exclusively on the road because State's athletic department was too incompetent to ask Alabama, LSU, or Auburn or require them to have to come to Starkville or even Jackson to come play them. We just said, yeah, we'll go on the road and take our beating every single year. That's great job by the old heads in the MSU athletic department years ago for doing that. But Mississippi State and Auburn have played quite a bit. They're not too far apart. There's a lot of history there. There's been a lot of big and fun games between the two sides. Obviously you had the game in 2014 where it was the battle for number one in the country. But there have been some that's also been a game that for both programs when they were together in the SEC West, there were a lot of years where that game dictated who ended up having a good season.
Yeah.
There was a stretch where that game was pivotal for both sides. And I think, yes, historically Auburn has had a lot more success than Mississippi State, but there was a run there for a while where this was a fun competitive series with a lot of really good games between the two teams. So I wouldn't mind if State and Auburn got paired up. There's been a lot of fun games between the two teams. But, yeah, I think Ole Miss and Kentucky are two I would lock in. And then after that, either Texas A&M or Auburn I think would make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, I guess I could see that. I mean, I is there really with Mississippi State's permanent opponents outside of Ole Miss? I mean, there's a couple obviously different, like, let's say candidates to choose from, and I'm not saying that like, oh, you got 15 other teams or 14 if you exclude Ole Miss, but I don't think there's like a set in stone. It has to be these teams, but I think the teams you had mentioned were right on point.
Yeah, and look, for Mississippi State, it can go a lot of different ways simply due to the fact that, again, they don't outside of Ole Miss, there's not a game that has to be played, which as a result opens the door that they could get paired with almost anyone. Like you mentioned Florida earlier, that's not like completely out of the question that could happen. Mississippi State and South Carolina, for one, as I talked about, teams used to have two. When this first started, teams had two permanent crossovers. South Carolina was the other one for Mississippi State alongside Kentucky. There was a long stretch they played Kentucky and South Carolina every single year. Mississippi State men's basketball, along with playing Ole Miss, because if you remember a few years, the SEC used to have, you had the three teams that you played home and away every single year. Mississippi State's three were Ole Miss, obviously, Alabama, which this is the one where I don't mind because that was like an SEC basketball rivalry in the 2000s and 90s between Mississippi State and Alabama. The other one was South Carolina, which two teams that don't care about each other whatsoever, but they got paired up for basketball. So maybe South Carolina could get paired with Mississippi State for football. I don't know. I would think I don't know that they'll get Kentucky. State, it could go a whole lot of different ways, but you're certainly hoping that you get three games that you're hoping you get at least two games. I won't bank on three. Can you get two that most years you think you have a chance of finding a win? That's kind of your best bet.